What is that relationship like, just walking around the house with them? Like, are they just the best?
They're really the best people. And I'm so excited Victoria's here tonight, and it means the world to me. She made my outfit, she customized this beautiful look, and I'm just like so happy to have her here tonight.
This was supposed to be the picture-perfect love story. A golden surname, billionaire luxury, a wedding that looked like royalty signing a peace treaty between two empires. Cameras flashing, designer smiles, Instagram perfection. So how did it turn into whispers, then headlines, and now a full-blown mystery that has fans asking, did Brooklyn Beckham finally reach a breaking point? Because something changed. Suddenly, the posts slowed down. The appearances felt different. The body language? Off. The silence? Loud. And then came the rumors. Rumors that Brooklyn wasn't just stepping back from the spotlight, but possibly stepping away from the very relationship that once looked unshakable. The billionaire fairy tale. The love story everyone thought was untouchable. What happened behind those mansion doors that the cameras didn't catch? What could be so intense that a Beckham, raised inside one of the most controlled public images in celebrity history, would risk shaking that image all over again? Is this another family rift? A private decision? Or something much bigger that nobody is ready to say out loud? Because when a Beckham snaps, it's never small. And this time, the silence is telling a story louder than any statement ever could. And just like that, the fairy tale started to feel staged. Not broken, not shattered, just off. The kind of off you can't explain, but you can definitely feel. Because for months, fans noticed something strange. Brooklyn and Nicola, once everywhere, hand in hand, inseparable, posting loved-up photos like clockwork, suddenly became quiet. Not disappeared, just quieter. Fewer captions, fewer red carpets, fewer perfect couple moments. And when a couple that public starts going silent, people don't assume peace. They assume something is happening behind the scenes. At first, it looked small, normal. Maybe they were just enjoying privacy. Maybe they were tired of the spotlight. But then the timeline started looking suspicious. The shift didn't happen randomly. It happened after a series of subtle moments that, when lined up, tell a very uncomfortable story. Moments most people ignored. But not the internet. Because the internet never ignores patterns. It dissects them. Brooklyn's interviews started sounding different. His tone changed. The way he spoke about independence, identity, and finding his own lane started carrying weight that felt personal. Almost defensive. As if he wasn't just talking about work. He was talking about life. And Nicola? She stayed calm. Smiling. Present. But noticeably more reserved in public. Less playful. Less outspoken. More measured. It wasn't dramatic. It was controlled. Which, somehow, felt even louder. Then came the resurfaced wedding narratives. The dress situation. The dance floor moment. The tension that people once dismissed as tabloid exaggeration suddenly didn't feel so exaggerated anymore. Because now, those old stories were being rewatched through a new lens. A lens where Brooklyn looked less like a privileged son, and more like someone trying to breathe. And here's where things get interesting. Brooklyn didn't explode publicly. He didn't rant. He didn't accuse. He didn't post cryptic quotes. He did something far more telling. He pulled back. From everything. The public image. The couple branding. The social media rhythm that once felt almost scheduled. It was as if he quietly stepped out of a performance nobody realized he was tired of acting in. And that's when the whispers started getting louder. Not from tabloids. From fans. Why do they look distant lately? Why does Brooklyn seem different? Why does this feel like a slow drift instead of a sudden fight? Because this didn't look like a breakup. It looked like emotional exhaustion. And emotional exhaustion doesn't happen overnight. It builds. Slowly. Quietly. Privately. The kind that makes a person smile in photos while feeling completely disconnected inside. People began revisiting Brooklyn's past attempts to find himself. Photography, modeling, cooking, business ventures. And the pattern was impossible to ignore. Every time he tried something new, the internet mocked him. Called him a Nepo baby. Said he was lost. Said he had no direction. But what if that wasn't confusion? What if that was someone desperately trying to figure out who they were outside of a last name, outside of expectations, outside of a relationship that came with its own spotlight? Because marrying into a billionaire family doesn't reduce pressure. It doubles it. Now you're not just Brooklyn Beckham. You're Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz. Two powerful surnames. Two legacies. Two worlds. And somewhere in the middle of that, a person trying to exist. The more people looked back, the more they noticed how often Brooklyn spoke about wanting peace, privacy, and normal life. Words that don't usually come from someone living inside a fairy tale. Those words come from someone overwhelmed. Someone who feels watched, judged, measured, and maybe misunderstood. Then came the name change. Brooklyn Peltz Beckham. At the time, people thought it was romantic. A modern, progressive move. Sweet, symbolic, supportive. But now, fans started asking a different question. Was that romance, or was that identity confusion? Was he blending names because he wanted unity, or because he didn't know where he belonged anymore? Because the more interviews resurfaced, the clearer one thing became. Brooklyn never talked about fame with excitement. He talked about it like a weight. And when someone spends their whole life under cameras, sometimes the only way to breathe is to step away from everything that keeps those cameras pointed at you. Even if that means stepping away from the relationship that once felt like a safe space. And that's where the tension starts to feel real. Because this doesn't look like a dramatic betrayal. It looks like a quiet realization. The kind where a person wakes up one day and realizes they've been performing for so long, they forgot what real life feels like. And if that's true, then this isn't a scandal. It's a personal breaking point. People close to the situation started noticing how Brooklyn's focus shifted heavily towards solo projects. His cooking content, his own ventures, his own rhythm, less couple branding, less shared spotlight, more individual presence. Not in a loud way, in a subtle, deliberate way. And subtle changes are always the loudest when you pay attention. Because nobody announces when they are emotionally checking out. They just start showing up differently. And that's exactly what happened. No public drama. No statements. No accusations. Just a man who suddenly looked like he was trying to reclaim something invisible. Control. Peace. Himself. And the more you watch it unfold, the more it feels like this wasn't about anger. It was about clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't scream. It whispers. And those whispers are what people are hearing now. Not that Brooklyn is fighting. Not that he's blaming. But that he might be choosing something radical in a world built on image. Space. Because sometimes, the most shocking move a person can make is walking away quietly. No noise. No mess. No headlines. Just distance. And when that distance involves a Beckham and a billionaire marriage, people start asking the question nobody wants to say out loud. Is this the beginning of the end? What made the situation even stranger was how normal everything looked on the surface. No angry unfollows. No deleted wedding photos. No cryptic captions. No dramatic airport sightings. Nothing that screams celebrity breakup. And yet, everything felt different. Because sometimes, the biggest shifts don't happen in what people do. They happen in what they stop doing. Brooklyn and Nicola used to feel like a brand within a brand. Coordinated appearances. Shared interviews. Matching energy. A united front that looked almost rehearsed in its perfection. But now, that rhythm had quietly faded. They were still together in public, but they no longer looked like they were performing together. And that tiny difference started ringing alarm bells for people who follow celebrity behavior like detectives. Fans began pointing out how Brooklyn started showing up alone more often. More solo outings. More individual focus. Less we, more I. And when he did mention Nicola, it sounded respectful, but distant. Careful. Measured. Like someone choosing words very precisely. Then came the resurfaced clips. Old interviews where Brooklyn talked about how overwhelming fame had been his entire life. How he never felt like he had room to fail. How every decision he made turned into a headline. At the time, those comments felt like normal frustration. Now they felt like clues. Because marrying into another ultra-wealthy, highly visible family doesn't reduce that pressure. It multiplies it. Two powerful legacies. Two public images. Two sets of expectations. And one person in the middle trying to figure out where he fits without disappointing anyone. That's when the internet started connecting dots nobody had connected before. What if the issue wasn't conflict? What if the issue was saturation? Too much attention. Too much image. Too much expectation. Too many eyes watching every move. And Brooklyn, just wanting quiet. The more people looked at his recent behavior, the clearer one thing became. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. tired in a way that doesn't come from arguments. Tired in a way that comes from emotional overload. From constantly being on. From constantly being watched. From living inside a life that looks perfect but feels heavy. And then came the whispers from so-called sources. Not explosive leaks. Not scandalous claims. Just subtle talk that Brooklyn had been craving more independence lately. That he wanted to slow down. That he wanted to live less publicly. That he wanted to build something that didn't rely on either family name. And that's when people started asking a very uncomfortable question. Can a relationship survive when one person wants the spotlight and the other wants to step out of it? Because Nicola didn't change. She was still present, still composed, still comfortable inside the world of appearances, events, and public life. She was raised in it. It was normal for her. Familiar. Structured. But for Brooklyn, that same environment might have started feeling like a loop he couldn't escape. A loop he had lived in since birth. And the realization hit fans hard. What if Brooklyn didn't snap at a person? What if he snapped at a lifestyle? The kind of lifestyle where every dinner, every vacation, every smile can turn into content. Where privacy becomes rare. Where even happiness feels performative. That's when the narrative shifted from relationship trouble to something much deeper. Personal identity. Because the more Brooklyn talks about finding himself, the more it sounds like someone trying to separate who he is from the world he was born into, and the world he married into. A double spotlight. A double legacy. A double weight. And in that space, people started noticing how often Brooklyn's recent focus has been on things that feel grounding. Cooking. Simple routines. Small projects. Quiet passions. Things that don't require red carpets or designer outfits. Things that feel normal. And normal is a dangerous desire when you live inside extraordinary circumstances. Because chasing normal sometimes means letting go of extraordinary things. Even if those things look perfect from the outside. Observers began pointing out how Brooklyn's body language in recent appearances had shifted. Less animated. Less expressive. More reserved. More thoughtful. As if he was present physically, but mentally somewhere else. Not unhappy. Just distant. And distance is what scares people the most in relationships. Because anger can be fixed. Distance usually can't. It grows quietly until one day, two people realize they are standing miles apart emotionally while still holding hands in public. That's the kind of shift fans think they are seeing. And what makes it even more intense is the silence. No denial. No clarification. No everything is fine posts. Just calm, steady quiet. The kind of quiet that feels intentional. The kind of quiet that says, we're handling this privately. And when celebrities handle things privately, the internet gets louder. Speculation started building that Brooklyn might be redefining what he wants his life to look like long-term. That he's rethinking what happiness actually means for him. That he's questioning whether the life he stepped into is the life he truly wants. Not because of drama. Because of clarity. Because sometimes you don't leave a situation because it's bad. You leave because it no longer feels right. And that's a much harder thing to explain to the world. Especially when the world thinks you're living a dream. Fans who once envied the fairy tale are now looking at it with a different lens. What if the fairy tale was overwhelming? What if the castles, the fame, the wealth, the cameras, the expectations became too loud for someone who just wanted quiet? And what if the only way to find that quiet is to step away from everything attached to the noise? That's the question hanging in the air now. Not did they fight, but did Brooklyn finally realize he needs a different kind of life? Because this doesn't look like drama. It looks like a slow emotional exit. The kind where a person mentally leaves long before anything changes physically. And if that's true, then what we're watching isn't a scandal. It's a transformation happening in real time. A man trying to step out of a story the world wrote for him, and into one he writes for himself. Even if that means rewriting his own fairy tale. And now, the part nobody wants to say out loud. What happens when the fairy tale doesn't end with a fight, but with a realization? Because by this point, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Brooklyn isn't reacting. He's recalibrating. He's not lashing out. He's not blaming. He's not accusing anyone of anything. And somehow, that makes this feel even more serious. Because emotional explosions are loud and temporary. Emotional clarity is quiet and permanent. The kind of clarity that changes a person from the inside without needing a public announcement. People close to celebrity culture know this pattern well. When stars go through something personal, they usually distract the public with more appearances, more photos, more everything is fine energy. Brooklyn did the opposite. He slowed down. And slowing down, in a world that never stops watching you, is a bold move. Because it forces people to notice the silence. The more this unfolds, the more it feels like Brooklyn isn't trying to leave a person. He's trying to leave a version of himself. The version that existed for cameras. For expectations. For legacy. For image. For public comfort. And maybe, just maybe, that version no longer fits. Because here's the uncomfortable truth fans are starting to accept. Brooklyn has lived his entire life inside a story written by other people. First, the story of being a Beckham. Then, the story of marrying into another powerful, ultra-visible family. At what point does a person stop and ask, where am I in all of this? That question hits differently when you realize he's only in his 20s and already feels like he's lived multiple public lives. The signs now feel less like rumors and more like signals. His focus on solo identity. His calm distance from couple-heavy visibility. His quiet shift toward personal passions. His body language that says, I'm here, but I'm thinking. And what fans are witnessing doesn't look like heartbreak. It looks like awakening. The kind that happens when someone finally understands what has been weighing on them for years but never had the space to admit it. And that's when the title starts making sense. Finally snaps. Not in anger. In awareness. Because snapping doesn't always mean shouting. Sometimes it means gently putting something down you've been carrying for too long. And when that something is a life that looks perfect to everyone else, the decision becomes even harder. That's why this feels so intense. Not because there's drama, but because there isn't. No scenes. No statements. No chaos. Just a quiet emotional shift happening in plain sight. And the world is watching it like detectives trying to decode body language instead of headlines. People are now asking questions they never thought to ask before. Was Brooklyn ever truly comfortable in this level of visibility? Did he step into a life that looked beautiful but felt overwhelming? Did he confuse love with escape at some point? And now, is he realizing that escape still kept him inside another spotlight? Because sometimes, you don't realize you're repeating a cycle until you're exhausted from it. And exhaustion changes people. It makes them crave simplicity, peace, privacy, a life where you're not constantly performing happiness. Fans who once admired the relationship are now watching with concern instead of envy. Because what they are seeing doesn't look like conflict. It looks like someone slowly detaching from a life that no longer feels like home. And detachment is always the final stage before change. What makes this even more powerful is how mature it looks. No blaming. No drama. No public narratives. Just a man seemingly choosing himself quietly. Which, in celebrity culture, is almost unheard of. Because most public figures fight to keep the image alive. Brooklyn looks like he's ready to let it fade. Not because it failed, but because he outgrew it. And that realization hits harder than any scandal ever could. Because if this is true, then this isn't a breakup story. It's a self-discovery story unfolding inside a marriage that the world thought was unshakable. And the most shocking part? Nicola hasn't done anything wrong. Which makes this even more complicated. Because when no one is the villain, the situation becomes painfully human. Two people. Two lives. Two expectations. One person quietly realizing he needs something different. And that's not something you can fix with communication or compromise, but that's something you can only fix by changing your environment. The silence from both sides now feels intentional. Respectful. Careful. As if they both understand that whatever is happening is too personal to turn into content. And yet, the public can feel it. The distance. The shift. The recalibration. Because sometimes, the loudest stories are told without a single word being spoken. And as this continues, one reality becomes unavoidable. If Brooklyn is truly stepping away from the life he built over the past few years, it won't happen dramatically. It will happen quietly. With grace. With distance. With acceptance. And one day, the world will wake up to an announcement that feels sudden, but was actually months in the making. That's how emotional clarity works. It moves slowly, until it doesn't. And maybe that's what we're witnessing right now. Not the end of a relationship, but the end of a version of Brooklyn Beckham that the world has known for years. A version built on expectations, legacy, image, and perfection. And the beginning of a version that simply wants to exist without all of that. Which, ironically, might be the most shocking move of all. Because walking away from drama is easy. Walking away from a dream life that everyone envies? That takes something much deeper. Something that looks a lot like finally, Snapping dot if you've made it this far, then you already feel it. This isn't just another celebrity rumor. This isn't just gossip for entertainment. This feels like watching a story unfold in real time without anyone actually telling us what's happening. And that's what makes it so intense. Because sometimes the truth isn't loud. It's hidden in the silence, the body language, the small changes nobody notices until it's too late. So now the real question is yours. What do you think is really going on here? Is Brooklyn stepping away from a relationship? Or is he stepping away from a life that never truly felt like his? Is this emotional distance or personal awakening? Is this the beginning of the end, or the start of a new version of him the world has never seen before? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you see that others might be missing. And if you enjoy deep dives like this, where we read between the lines, connect the dots, and uncover the stories hiding behind perfect Instagram smiles, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because the next story, it's already brewing. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.